Tish?
She may not be able to talk. I don't know where she's at. She's just
She
joining.
in, she in Columbus?
I think so. Yeah, she's competing this weekend at the
At
Arnold.
the at the Arnold,
Yeah,
yeah.
'Cause she's a
yeah.
badass.
I'm a
Sweet.
badass. No, I
Oh,
actually
I'm
kind
a
of am
ref
because
kid.
I have an athlete competing tomorrow, so I'm kind of like most excited about that. I guess just the leveling up piece of uh, it's my athlete, right? So I brought this athlete to the stage, and she came to me, um, but uh, but she'll be my athlete. So I get the kudos of taking an athlete to the Arnold's and having her compete. So that's my level up, and then I compete on Sunday, but and then I picked up a refing, an extra refing assignment. So I'm refing on tomorrow evening as a technical controller. So like again, a level up. Last year when I was here, I was score table. Now I'm technical controller. Next year when I'm here, I'll have my national title by then, and I'll be a national ref on the platform. So that'd be cool. Anyway,
Nice.
leveling up.
I'll say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, big time.
But good
Kick
fun
ass.
walking by. We went and took pictures at the Arnold statue. So
Yeah.
we had that done. But yeah, Dad's tired. So I'm like, okay, go take your nap. We'll connect later. But got to give him kudos, an older gentleman walking around the convention center. If you've ever been here, is like, I don't know, three New York City blocks. Like it's massive and it's all
Yeah, it's big.
inside. So it's kind of nice, right? If it was bad weather outside, you could walk from one end to the other and never leave. And then there's breezeways to most of the local hotels. So you still don't have to go outside if you have to cross the street. So it's
Yeah,
nice.
skywalks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for
So,
the
Yeah, it's
movers.
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's how Midwesterners do it, man. When they foul weather where you get 4 seasons, they're like skywalks. Nobody
Yeah.
has to go outside.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, they do the same in Tahoe and like the Nevada side of Tahoe with all the casinos.
Yeah.
You cross the street by going under or you cross
Oh, under.
the
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nice.
they have tunnels under. So you go downstairs, and of course Americans are a bunch of fat asses, so it's all moving sidewalks.
Moving sidewalks. Nice.
And so the quote unquote people movers, where people just stand on them instead of what they're supposed to be, which is increase your movement. So with each step you move an extra foot, right? So it's supposed to make you faster, but instead people are like, oh look, I'm a conveyor belt person, I'm just gonna stand on this like a piece of meat. Drives me absolutely bonkers. I hate it.
It's almost as I like it when people stand in line for the escalator. The escalator's right next to the concrete stairs going up, and it's like, oh, the concrete stairs must be out of order,
Right. Yeah.
Well, fuck, everybody wait in line for the fucking escalator.
Don't give me.
I was getting coffee. There's a market nearby, and we were getting coffee, and I asked the gentleman like, because that it's like an open market, and so the market doesn't open until 9 a.m. And I was like, okay. He's like, well, but we have a location that's about a mile down the road that is like a coffee shop, and so it will open early. And I was like, I'm a power lifter. Like a mile is long. He's like, well, I'm an Ironman, and a mile is nothing. And I was like, well, good for you. I'm not walking a mile to go get coffee. I will just do something different. So it's kind of funny. Perspectives.
Yeah.
That's the thing, man. You gotta put it in criteria, because a lot of people, and this is kind of an added tidbit, a lot of people will look at that and be like, I should be able to walk the mile. It's like, well, if it's not a priority for you, then don't worry about it.
Right. I mean, it's not like I couldn't walk the mile.
You definitely
but
could,
I'm like,
but you don't need to.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna waste that energy. So not just
gummy bears only go so far. Chocolate cake only goes so far as a power lifter.
Right. Well, in that open market, there was one stand. There was an ice cream stand, but fine. But there was a cheesecake stand too. So I was like, okay, I kind of got like all the things. There was a pretzel shop for my dad, but I was good. I did get there's a pasta shop, and so they had like some salmon and chicken with a little bit of pasta. And I'm like, all right, there's breakfast for tomorrow, so we're good. But yeah, I do eat decent once in a while. I try not
to.
But
my biggest hurdle with you when I was coaching you, and you seem to be the very same, is it's not about getting you to eat well. It's about getting you to eat often and eat enough. Like you don't eat enough, which seems to be a problem with most women. Like they don't want to eat.
Right.
Fair. Like,
well, because the what's instilled is if you're eating, you're gaining weight, so then you're fat.
Yeah.
But if you have to eat, like my athlete I'm taking, right? She's a 56 kilo lifter. So she's a small person, right? But still, it's been like, okay, you have got to eat. Like she didn't stop dropping weight until she ate more. And I'm like, I'm not a nutrition person, but I'm going to tell you, you got to eat a little more. She, oh no, I couldn't possibly. Like, no, I was like, all right, So then I tried to instill in her at least a refeed once a week. Like you gotta do something. And then it turned into like kind of a refeed every couple of days. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm losing weight. Okay, well, eat more than one meal a day might be good.
Yeah. And, bodybuilders have that problem a lot,
Right.
especially bikini bodybuilders, female bikini bodybuilders, because when they come off of it, it creates a really rough dysmorphia.
Yeah.
And so they want to keep that stage physique. And
right.
So then they start getting scared of food, and it creates really bad eating disorders. And so
right.
good coaches know how to back their people out of their really strict diets and reverse diet them, which I know Gavin is very skilled at here in the portal.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, food has always been my kryptonite. Like I can hit the gym dedicated. I can go twice a day. I can lift heavy. I can put in the work. But man, I like my food. I like pretzels and cheese and beer and scotch, and like I like all the bad things. And but to that point, like, I've made a lot of progress in the 15, 16 years that I've been in fitness. Like I used to put down 2-liter bottles of Coke and Pepsi every 2 days by myself with a bag of Doritos in my hand while playing video games. Like it was not a lifestyle. So anyway, I want to respect everybody's time. I want to hop in this. I'm glad that you were able to get to your destination, Tish, and everything's going well, and you found cheesecake and ice cream. That's always a good plus. Looking forward to watching the live stream on Sunday to see you lift. You're on featured stage, aren't you? You're on the big light stage.
Yeah, we tried to finagle our way in because I don't have my credentials yet. I'll get that in a little bit this afternoon. But so we tried to sneak past the guard at the gate, and we were like, I told Dad, I'm like, let's just walk confidently. We'll just go in. So the guy was like, so do you have your credentials yet? And I was like, no, not yet. He's like, well, you could go get them. And I was like, damn it. But we could see the main stage through the doors, because they're putting up their lights and doing stuff now, whatever. And I was like, I'm going to be on that stage on Sunday. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Glad to hear it. So just some admin stuff as of, I guess that would be Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. I'm really messed up with the dates with the shorter month last month. The portal went free. So we went ahead and opened that up to the entire world. So that we have an opportunity to serve and be there for our community. We've had some new members join. I'm hoping in the coming weeks and months, we're going to have some more, and we'll continue to grow. So if you see a new member, please feel free to reach out to them and let them know they're welcome and be there and support them. If you are a new member and you're joining this call for the first time or you haven't gotten engaged with anybody else, especially Matt, myself, and Tish, we're the three that really put this all together and started this whole thing. And so we are always happy and open to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to reach out either by posting in the portal and one of us will answer, or just sending us a direct message with one of us that you align with most. Or if somebody invited you, reach out to them and they can work with us. But there's a lot of opportunities for us to get you support. So please feel free to use them. It is now March. We have not planned out our soiree for March yet. We're still working on some logistics of that, but look forward to that. And in June, we're still having the Sovereign Summit. So if you haven't got your tickets yet and registered for that, highly recommend you do that. That's a 3-day all day event where we pour into you guys and get you to that next level. I teach all of what I teach my coaching clients just in a very short amount of time, and we have guest speakers and things of that nature. So hope to see you guys all there. And I think that's all the admin stuff. Did I miss anything? I think that's everything.
No, those are the 3 big ones. Yeah.
Okay. So today's in finance calls, we always talk about making more money, saving more money, building businesses, really setting up those treasure coffers for anything and everything so that you can live a sovereign life. One of the number one issues that most people claim why they can't be courageous, why they can't have principles, why they can't have values is because they need the job. And so if you're not setting yourself up for success financially, then you also are not setting yourself up to live a principled and virtuous life. And so we really like to help people with that. Additionally, one of the reasons we made the portal free is because we kept coming up against the friction of, I really need this in my life. I really want to be a part of this. I can really see the value in this. I'm just not in a place to afford it. And so, you know, the three of us came together and we said, we want to serve more. We want to help more people. So let's just get rid of that friction point. You know, we're not in it. We're a for-profit, right? We talk about it all the time. We know what money, how important money is, and we eventually will need money to run a ranch and have operational costs, which we will be on that piece of dirt, our own piece of dirt. But in the meantime, there's no reason why we can't support our community right now and help them get to that point where they can support our vision later. And so today's our financial call. And so I really wanted to talk about something that's I've had to struggle with. I know almost everybody that I've ever met has always struggled with, and that's around changing your financial position. And so I wanted to give some tactical advice, things that you can implement right now today, that will change your entire financial position. Because a lot of times people think, oh, if I just make $1 million, if I hit the lottery, if I hit this, if I get this amount of money, I'm set for life. And the reality is, of that mindset, 60 to 70% of all lottery winners are broke within the first year because they have no idea how to manage it. And most of them have less money out of it because they overspent and they don't know how to manage it. And so there's, you know, that old cliche, burning a hole in your pocket. And so I have that problem. When I have money, it burns a hole in my pocket. I want to go spend it. So I've had to set up certain mechanisms to avoid that. I've also had to outsource some of that thought process to other people to help mechanize that. Like for the business with Tish, she's our financial person. I gave that to her. So my feeling of a hole burning in my pocket doesn't affect me because I just gave that responsibility to her and said, well, it's all on you. I don't put it on me because I'm a great visionary, but I'm terrible with the money here. So the reality is we all could be better with our money. We can all find ways to make more money. But even if you have a lot of money, if you don't know how to spend it properly, if you don't know how to allocate it effectively, you will go broke again. It's like, no, if you don't fill it back up, it goes away. If you deplete it too fast, it goes away. That's just the reality. And in the world that we live in, especially in America, the American dream has been kind of perverted into, let's just have flashy, blingy stuff and show out for people that don't really matter and go broke in the process, right? So there's a really cool quote that I really like is like, don't go broke trying to act rich, which a lot of people do. I've talked to people that have taken credit card debt out for bottle service because it was, you know, $300 for a bottle you can get for $12 at the local supermarket. I've seen people go into debt for cars just because they felt like that status symbol was necessary. They bought really expensive cars, and it didn't serve them. I myself bought a BMW because that was my point. And I could afford it and I continued to pay that payment. And then I realized when I started Heroes, that was no longer serving me. It was no longer a priority. So I gave it back and I just ate that debt and I had to pay that off. And so, but in the meantime, I was able to allocate that money that I was paying into the payment into the business, which served the business better. So a lot of it is just learning what your priorities are. A lot of it is just allocating systems and mechanizing your money management system so that you can make your dollar stretch further. And so I wanted to give you the top 4 things that really shifted my way of handling finances. This is something that I've seen echoed across the board with financial advisors, which we have a couple of financial advisors in the portal. So if you really want some details, reach out to them and they can really dive into this with you. But these are 4 tactical, instantaneous things that you can identify and implement that will change in the next couple of days, the next week, the next year, that will set you up for success. And so I wanted to give these to the portal, especially now that we're free. This is a very timely call because now you get this information without having to pay us for it. And so this is really going to help set you up for the future. So the first thing that most people know pretty intuitively is reduce overhead. Reducing overhead means getting rid of the car payment, getting rid of the phone payment, not eating out as much, not going out as much, deleting bills, right? Like if you have like 17 streaming services, try and truncate it down to the ones you use the most, right? That is what reduce overhead is. And your house is your business, right? What you put into your home is exactly what you're going to get out. It's no different than a business. So if you have a ledger for your business, you should have a ledger for your home. And And that is operating costs, right? Now, your home operating costs are going to be different than a business operating cost, because a business operating cost, my face is driving me nuts. Sorry, guys. I have ants in my face and I haven't even had pre-workout. So the operating costs of a business are going to be a lot more straightforward, right? Because you have an outcome that you're seeking. And so it's easy to identify everything that gets me to that outcome. That's an operating cost. And anything that doesn't get me to that outcome, that's not a good operating cost. So I'll get rid of it, right? So it's easy to manage your overhead when it's a business because it's a lot more straightforward. There's not a lot of nuance there. But with a home, especially if you have children, especially if you have a partner, that overhead is going to have a lot more nuance, because what are your operating costs? What is a need versus a want? And one of the things, much like in fitness, most people don't know the difference between bored and hungry. Most people don't know the difference in finance between need and want. Most people will say, I need the latest phone. I need the nicest car. I need to eat out 3 times a week. They actually tell themselves this, and they've convinced themselves that somehow they will perish, or their life will somehow be lessened if they're not going to the movies 3 times a week, if they're not eating sushi 6 times a week. That's just not the case. It sucks. It might be a struggle. It might be something you have to learn. But the reality is those are not essential. So the number one thing you want to do is you want to write it all down. What are you spending every month? Take a 3-month snapshot. You can get this on your online banking system. You can get a statement, take a 3-month snapshot, and look at all the times you ate out, all the times you went to the grocery store, all the times you went and did something for entertainment. What were your maintenance costs on vehicles, gas, rent, like your utility bills, and you break it down. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. And some people do well with one versus the other. So when you're reducing overhead, I'm not a big proponent of going to bare minimum, bare essentials for long periods of time. The human brain will not do well with that. In fact, this goes across the board into pretty much anything. If you deplete yourself for too long, the body will bounce back and you'll be well worse off than when you started. Happens in fitness all the time. People that they starve themselves all the way down and then they rubber band up bigger than they were before, because they depleted themselves so much that they didn't get any dopamine from any success. So when they hit their goal, they're like, well, what the hell was that? The point of that? So when you're reducing overhead, reduce down, but still leave a little wiggle room as best you can for that coffee, for that donut, for that, whatever it is that you want to, that makes you feel good about what you're working towards. Because otherwise you're just inviting burnout, right? If you go, well, my rent is this, my utilities are this, I need internet, so I need that, but I don't need a phone, a car. I don't need to drive that much. I don't need to go out. I don't need to hang out with my friends. I don't need to hang out with my family. I don't need to eat out. And all you're doing is working 40 hours a week, maybe more, 60 hours a week, to just go home and sit quietly in your home. And you're like, well, at least it's warm and it's a house. You're going to burn out because there's nothing there. There's no reason for you to thrive. You're just surviving. And for a time, right? If you're in survival mode, I've been in survival mode. I've slept in my car. I've been homeless before. For a time, you can do that. But you got to have a carrot at the end. You got to have something at the end that's like, okay, I did this for 3 months. I did this for 6 months. That means this is the reward. What's your reward system, right? Is it $10,000 as the bank? Is it a debt paid off? Is it at the end I go on a trip? Is it at the end I go out with my friends? Is it at the end we do a girls' night, a guys' night? We do a retreat? Like, you got to have a carrot. So reduce your overhead, but be realistic about it. And everybody's going to be different. Everybody has a different calibration. And the more you practice this, that calibration is going to change too. When I first started, I was like, I got to be able to eat out 3 times a week, but I just won't go to the grocery store because I was a fat kid and I just loved my Taco Bell and I loved my McDonald's and that's just what I grew up on and that's what I liked. And I did that for about 6 months. I was like, okay, I won't do that 5 days a week. I'll do that 3 days a week. And then I got down to 3 days a week and I was like, why am I even doing this at all? I'll just go to the fucking grocery store and I can buy all this stuff. And that's what I did. And now I might eat out maybe once a month, twice a month and call it good. And that saved me a lot of money. So when you're reducing overhead, go down, identify what your essential bills are. And my grandma, she taught me this really cool function. I do it cerebrally now, but I used to do it physically. Is I'd get 3 envelopes and I'd write on them. And I'd take the money out for the month. And on one envelope, that would be my bills. On the next envelope, that'd be my food. And then food and gas. And then the last envelope is my fun. And I'd split up the money. What do I know is my bills? Put that money in there for the bills, pay the bills. And then whatever I put in food and whatever I allocate to food and gas, that's the money I put in there. And then anything that's left over and anything I get after that's squared away, that goes into fund. And then that's what I can use. I can save it. I can, and I've heard some people not put it into fund. Like that was just how my grandma was wired. She loved her fund. Some people put it into savings, right? And that's probably a better long-term system. And you might even be able to split it into 4, right? Instead of 3, you have 4. It goes, bills, food and gas, and then your fund, your savings, and then maybe whatever's left after your savings, your allocated savings, you can do with what you want, and that's fine too. And that's that carrot. But you got to know where you're at. So you got to write it down. You got to know what you're spending. You got to know what you need, right? Like if you have 17 streaming services, do you really need 17 streaming services, or is that just kind of like a preference, right? Like I used to have Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, right? Because I love music. I didn't really need all those. So I now have one. I have one streaming service that I pay for because I hate ads. I don't know about any of you, but if I'm at the gym and I'm listening to music, I don't want something coming on talking about guys Viagra. Like I just don't. That's not what I want to hear about, or anything for that matter. So I need the music to stay solid. So I pay for that. That's a need for me because it serves the gym. It serves my health, my fitness. So for me, that's a need. And it's like $10. So I allocate that. Limit your unnecessary spending. I mentioned this earlier, like fast food, eating out, going on date nights and things like that, buying your kids new stuff, right? Like we love to spoil our kids, but do they really need that $300 Lego set? Probably not. They probably don't, right? So limit unnecessary spending and push it somewhere else. Delayed gratification, right? If you hit a savings point, then you can go eat out. If you hit bills paid and everything's good, whatever's left over, you can use that to go on a trip or whatever, right? Like create that carrot. So reduce overhead. Now, the second one that I would say is the number one underutilized function of changing your financial situation. Make more fucking money. Like, it astounds me how many people I talk to that are like, I just can't make ends meet. And I'm like, okay, go get another job. And they're like, well, I can't go get another job. You can't or you won't, because it's scary. It's very scary. And here's the beauty of today's day and age. With this right here, what we're doing, you can go to YouTube, spend 20 hours learning a skill, and then market that skill on YouTube and make an extra $200 a month within 20 hours. You do that right away, right? If you make under $500 doing a job a month, you don't have to claim it for taxes. Like you're not going to get hit audited for not claiming under, I think it's 600 now with the whole bullshit with Biden and all that. But like there's a certain threshold and you got to look it up, and don't take my word for it. You got to look it up. But there's a certain threshold where you can claim that you made that money or you don't have to claim it on taxes. It's just money that you got, right? And so you can literally learn a skill, whether that's video editing, appointment setting, podcast, like you can make skills, identify skills that are very easy. Building websites. Website building was one thing that I did back in, and I was talking to Tony Watley about this. He did the same thing. Website building is a skill set. And it's kind of like magic to people that don't know anything about it. So if you're good at that skill set, if you're just okay at that skill set, you don't even have to spend an hour on it. If it takes you 10 minutes and you have a template to build a website and everybody likes your website and all you do is edit, like this is the name of the company, here's their logo, this is where the button goes, and that takes you 10 minutes, you could literally spend that 10 minutes and sell that website for $300, $500, $1,000. And you could build websites, right? You go on Fiverr, you make an account, you're like, I will build you a website in 2 days. And it's $500 for a fully one. Just tell me what you want. And you just use your template. You just plug it in the template. And now in 10 minutes, you just made $500. There's a lot of things that you can do that you're not giving yourself credit for. And the resources are right here. This thing will make you so much freaking money. And we're paying for it. Like you're paying for this. You pay a monthly service and all you're doing is playing Flappy Bird. Like you're paying to play Flappy Bird. Like that's weird. To me, that's weird. Like I play games on my phone, but I also use it for business. I talk to my team. I connect with people. I use social media to market the business. I learn. Like there's so much knowledge out there. You can make more money starting tomorrow by just going, hey guys, I know how to replant pots or repot plants. Just put that out there. I know how to repot plants and they'll live. And I'll guarantee your plant for 2 weeks after I repot it. If it dies in that 2 weeks, I'll buy you a new plant. Well, 9 times out of 10, repotting a plant is not going to take that much energy. It's not going to take that much effort. And the likelihood the plant's going to die is a lot lower as long as you do some basic systems, which you can learn on YouTube. You charge them $100 to repot all the plants in their house. You guarantee all the plants for 2 weeks. If it dies within that 2 weeks, you'll buy them a new plant. What are plants? Like $20? You charge them 100, 2 plants die, you're still $60 up. You just added $60 net to your weekly, monthly income for 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour of work. What could you actually do with an extra $200? And that's just one person, right? 2 people. Like, what could you do with that extra $50? And I think a lot of it is we're stuck in this mechanism of like my 9 to 5, right? My 9 to 5. I got a job. I'm good. It's stable. Fine. Use the stability to make sure your necessities are paid, but go branch out. I have a day job. It pays all my bills so that I can do this for free for you guys. Like, that's why I have the day job. It's a great job. I love my job. I make good money and it allows me to do this. Shift the paradigm. If you need more money, if you're struggling, money's out there. Money's not hard to come by. Matt actually had a hard time teaching me this because I grew up poor. I was like, money's hella hard. What are you talking about? But it's true, right? Like if you have a decent skill set, you don't even have to be great at it, a decent skill set. Most people just don't want to do the work to go find somebody. They'll pay you just because you're there. And you don't have to gouge people. Don't gouge people. Don't be like, hey, my websites, I've only been doing it for 20 hours and it's $8,000 for a new website because I'm that good. Like, stow the ego. Go back to number 1. What was your overhead? What were your necessities? What were your bills, right? If your bills are, $3,000 a month and you're making $3,000 a month, would $200 a month help you live a better life? Your bills are already covered. You're square. But if you could just spend 10 minutes and make $100 and you do that once a week, that's $400 extra for one 10-minute period. For 40 minutes, you make an extra $400 building websites, right? And this is just an example that I know works because I've done it. And I know a lot of people that have done something similar. But that extra $400, could you take your girl out? Could you take a guy out? Could you buy your kid that thing that they want? Could you feel less stressed about putting gas in the car? Could you have nicer fruits and vegetables? Could you be healthier? Could you afford a gym membership now? Right? Like these things all play into that. And so don't overlook adding more money to your income when looking at how to put yourself in a financial spot. And it's not as big a deal as people make it out to be. Don't make a resume. You don't have to make a resume. You don't have to go get references. You don't have to go and do the rigmarole of like going to a company and be like, hey, are you hiring? You can literally go to your phone and be like, I build websites. Anybody want a website built? Build the first 5 for free. And then once you have people say they're good, then build the next 10 for 15, 50, and then like 100 and then 2. That's a process. Like you just add a few bucks. You wouldn't have had that few bucks before. And it cost, like I said, you make a template. Maybe the first time it costs you an hour. And then from then it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes a piece. Cool. And then you can just put it in your pocket. On months you need it, you pull it out. Months you don't need it, maybe you don't do the work. Maybe you don't care. It's fine. But that's how you can establish yourself in a financial uptick a lot faster. It's immediate. Like I said, it only takes 20 hours to get good at anything, really. Enough to sell it. It's only like 20 hours, right? Because what you're doing is you're saving somebody else that 20 hours of time because they could go do that too, but they're not going to. So they're going to pay you because they don't want to go learn that. You did, so you pay them. And then you'll learn. As you do it, you'll learn. I can change this. I can add this font. I can add this color. I can add these functions. I can make these things do this or whatever. Customer on the market will tell you what they want. So add new skill sets, add more income. Don't have to change jobs. You can do it in your spare time. That time you sit there binge watching that Netflix show, you could be binge watching a skill set. You could be binge watching somebody teaching you something, or you could be spending that time while watching the Netflix show on Fiverr, making your own little post. I build websites. Pay me $20 and I'll review a movie and give you a synopsis. Like that's a thing people do. You can do it. I don't recommend it. I wouldn't pay you for that, but somebody out there will, right? There's people out there that would trade their money for your time. Find something that they'll trade their money for your time for. Number 3. Before I say 3 and 4, I'm going to preface that there are different types of debt. If you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you ever read Dave Ramsey. There are different types of debt. A lot of people are just like, all debt's bad, right? You don't want any debt. And if you're struggling, 9 times out of 10, you don't want debt, because you're going to have to pay it at some point, and it's going to cost you interest, and it's going to cost you more money than had you just paid cash. So 9 times out of 10, you don't want debt. But there's liability debt and there's asset debt. Liability debt is the fancy car that depreciates as soon as you drive off the lot, and it does nothing different than have 4 wheels and drives you to and from work. You just want to be fancy. Gold chains, nice clothes, things that like you could get off brand, but you just want the status symbol. You don't want to be judged. The newest phone, when the old phone works just fine. Going into debt for these things, they don't put money back in your pocket. Liability debt is taking other people's money and then spending more than the other people's money that you took. That's liability debt. You're not going to make any money off of it. You buy a phone, it was originally $900, but because you put it on credit, it's going to cost you $1,200. You just lost money on a phone that was only worth $900 because you wanted to pay it over time. That's called liability debt. Okay. It doesn't put any money back in your pocket. It can't be leveraged. I would argue that your phone is probably the biggest investment, but if you're doing what I just said earlier and just watching Netflix on it and playing Flappy Bird, it's a liability debt. If you're using this phone to call people and make money and build things or whatever, then you could make an argument that this can become an asset debt because now it's going to put money in your pocket. But most people that swipe their credit cards on things, they go and take loans on things, is for liability debt. And one thing that I will tell you is if you buy a home, that's a liability debt. A lot of people are like, oh, it's an asset. It's not, because if you live in it, it's not, you're not making any money on it. It's actually costing you money to live in it because you yourself are going to have to handle when the water heater breaks, the HVAC breaks, the sink blows up, you have a water leak, the roof is leaking. That's a liability debt. Houses are liability debts. Now, I'm not saying don't own a house. That's your choice, but don't mistake it as an investment unless you buy an investment property where you then rent it out and have a management company take care of it for you, where somebody else is paying that mortgage, somebody else is paying that debt. That house is a liability for you. I learned that the hard way. I bought a house and then had to fix the HVAC, had to fix the water heater, had to it was originally $325,000. By the end of it, it was like a $450,000 debt because I had to fix all that stuff. That was my liability, right? So liability is where it costs you money. Asset money is where it makes you money. Asset debt is where it makes you money. So that's a good question. Home ownership is a liability debt. What if you rent? What type of debt is that? Rent is not debt. Rent is not debt. Rent is a subscription model. Because if you don't want to pay it, you will not have the subscription and you will leave. So it is not debt at all. Rent is a bill. Rent is a subscription. You don't look at Pandora as debt. It's a subscription. Rent is a subscription model. If I wanted to pick up and move and I rent, I don't owe anybody any explanation. I could literally just leave. Now, they may have something in your clause that says, give us 30-day notice and blah, 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 but you won't have any outstanding debt past that. I think it depends. I think it depends on the situation, right? So somebody asked, is it better to own or is it better to rent? In my mind, and I'll get back to these are great questions, so I want to answer in line. But in my mind, renting is better than owning. And I'll explain why. One, renting is better than owning because you can pick up and leave whenever you want with no strings attached. You don't have to find a seller. You don't have to find anybody to do it. Maintenance costs. When you rent, maintenance is handled by the property management company. So if the water heater goes out, that's $2,000 that they have to put out. My HVAC went out at the beginning of last winter. That was $2,900 that the property management, the rental company had to put up for the HVAC. I didn't have to put that up. I just paid my rent and it was covered. Garbage disposal, toilets, sinks, leaks, that's all handled on a rental. I don't have to put any money out on that. So I'm leveraging a rental subscription model. As I'm here, I'll pay you to be here. I'm okay with that. Now, the downside of that is I have nothing to leverage as asset debt either. So the benefit of owning a home is once you pay enough into it, you can turn around and leverage that to pull out a loan against it as a secured loan that you can then turn around and go invest into another property. If you're not going to do that, I recommend rent, because you're just owning the overhead for no reason. But again, it's different for everybody. If you're the type of person that's like, I need to be able to say this is mine in 30 years, and you this is where your roots are, this is where you want to do things, you want to be able to hand that to your children, you need to own, because you can't own a rental, you can't hand a rental to your children, right? But that's different, right? That's a different priority. In the money talk, a house is liability. Now, and I'm getting a little into the nuance here. If I own a home and I live in it, if I buy the house and I have a mortgage and I live in it, and I didn't put 20 down, so I have primary mortgage insurance. I don't know how many people have owned houses in this community, but generally speaking, if you don't put 20% down on say a $500,000 home, you have to have primary mortgage insurance. That insurance is 20% of your monthly bill. So if you buy a $500,000 house and you only put 10% down, you have, say $495,000 to go, right? $495,000 to go. Okay, you have $495,000. So you break that up across, say, a 30-year fixed, right? That 30-year fixed, your monthly payments for a $500,000 house, $495,000 is probably going to be around $2,200. Then you put an extra 20% on that $2,200, you're probably looking at a $2,500 payment every month for your mortgage. Once you pay enough into that through mortgage, through your primary, that PMI can be taken off by a refinance because you put 20% equity in. Okay. Once that PMI comes off, you save that $400, right, a month in primary mortgage insurance. You still have that 20% equity, right? So that 20% you refinance, you still have that 20% equity. Then you get up to like say 30-40% equity. You then take a refi with a cash out equity clause, which basically means you're going to refinance, and all the equity that you own that you've already paid, you're going to take that out as cash. Then you take that cash and you go buy a second property. It could be a duplex, it could be a fourplex, it could be an apartment complex, however much you have. That becomes your investment property. That's how you leverage a house as asset debt, because now the house is making money for you. You pulled the money out, and then the people that rent this are now paying your mortgage by living there for you rent, right? Like I rent here, so like I'm probably paying somebody's mortgage on this house who have taken money out multiple times to go get other investment houses. So it just depends on how you're leveraging it. To keep it simple, if all you're doing is living in it, I recommend rent. If all you care about is a place that's warm to stay, that's in a nice area, I recommend rent every day of the week, because you can pick up and move when the area sucks. You have no cares if the taxes go up and you don't want to pay them anymore. You don't have to give a shit if the politics don't match your lifestyle anymore. The school starts to do things that are weird with you again. You can just pick up and leave. If you own, however, you have to sell, there's contingencies, you have to figure things out, not to mention all the overhead of fixing things, right? So simply put, if you're going to leverage it as an asset and put it up and pull equity out of it and go and get other investment properties, own 100%. If you're just going to live in it, rent, because you're just throwing money into the same money is going out. But the other one, you have to be responsible for all the other stuff. So those are the 4 things that I would say to change your entire financial setup, right? Reduce your overhead, identify and reduce your overhead. Make more money, develop skill sets and make more money, and then remove liability or reduce liability debt and increase your asset debt and start making your money work for you. Now, within those spaces, right, there are real tactical things like you need to budget. If you're going to reduce overhead, you need to have a budget. Now, the budget doesn't have to be strict. Like, I don't like strict budgets. I grew up poor. It really messes me up when I feel like I can't afford food, right? Even if I can afford food, but I'm choosing to not buy the food because I'm trying to save, it really messes me up. It makes me feel like, why the hell am I working? I'll burn out faster. So I have to find my calibration, and everybody's is going to be different. Right? Because it's easy to say things, and a lot of gurus will say this, just stop eating out. And then people follow it, And then they eat out every day after they fall off. They eat out every day because they're like, this is fucking stupid, right? Well, yeah, it's stupid for you because you didn't take into account any of your nuances as a human, right? Bottom line is stop making excuses, take responsibility, just don't spend it. Like these are all just unequivocally flawed systems of universality and has no nuance whatsoever. Do they work? Yeah, 100% they could. Theoretically, calories in, calories out, money in, money out. These are fundamentally sound concepts, but humans are not fundamentally sound. We've learned that over the last few years, right? So the whole point of this is making sure that you're as fundamentally sound as you possibly can while understanding that humans are flawed, while understanding there are hurdles to emotionality, preconceived notions. We have these things that I'm trying to baggage. It's the best way to say this. Whatever your baggage is, don't let it hinder you. Identify it, then overcome it. Give yourself grace to overcome it, right? So whatever that is, right? Like I said, when I first started, I was like, I can't not eat out. And then I realized I could not eat out. And then I realized I really shouldn't eat out at all because I don't really like it anyway, right? That was a process. It's not immediate. And a lot of people want to make it immediate. It's not going to be immediate. You follow these 4 principles, reduce overhead, make more money, reduce your liability, and increase your asset. Those will be immediately felt. How long you can put up with it, how long you can calibrate it to be long-term functional, that's going to be based on each individual person. Budget, I like the 3 envelopes method. Once my bills are paid, once my gas and food is covered, then everything else, I don't really care. In the last couple of years, I've been focusing more on savings because I want to buy the ranch, right? So like I want Heroes Veritas to have a ranch. I have my own goals for that. So my fund money is more savings money now. That's how that works. So my fund money is getting a ranch where I can have fun all the time. Like that's the way I see it. So that's my new calibration, right? And then beyond that, give yourself grace to screw up, right? Like when I first started not eating out, I would then crave eating out. And then I'd be like, stop being weak, stop being this, stop being that. You need to just stop. You just push through, bro, because that's what all the wisdom of the pseudo gurus tell me. But the reality is, like I said, eventually I fell off and then I ate out all the time. So it's much better to have a controlled dopamine hit than it is to have a flood because you've been deprived for so long, right? This goes into fitness too. Like eat healthy 80% of the time, and then that 20% of the time you want to have that piece of chocolate cake. Have the piece of chocolate cake so you don't eat the whole cake. You just have the piece of cake. But if you deny yourself the slice for so long, eventually you're going to end up waking up out of a sugar coma covered in Cheeto dust and chocolate all over your face, and you're like, what happened, right? Like that can happen. That's how the human brain works. You go into survival mode. And the same thing happens with finance. So I hope those helped. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Again, I'm not a financial guy. I'm not a guru, but I know what works. I know what logically works. This is echoing the real financial gurus and everything. So I know that this works. So I'm comfortable sharing this with you guys, but everybody's going to be different. And if you really are in dire straits, seek professional help. Like you really need help, find a financial advisor to really tell you how to do things and overcome those things. And beyond that, maybe a therapist, because sometimes that baggage can be really tough, right? Some people have really bad baggage, and I get it.
Yeah, I was going to tap that piece, which was the stress piece of it.
You got
money is do I?
Yeah.
Oh, money is a big piece of stress, right? So the taking into account the grace and everything that goes with that, like, yeah, you can set a budget and you can do all the cutting down of whatever's, but your goal of what is it for? Are you saving for this? Or are you saving for that? Or whatever it is, I would say the piece is like, where's the stress piece of it? You know, make it to the point of where you can take the stress away. If it's that you have to cut down super tight and it's going to be even more stressful than if you are not making your budget each month, then don't do that because it becomes the stressful piece. Where's your happy place? Back in the day, like I said, I'm a preschool teacher by trade, so they don't make much money. So it's not about like, I want to save this or that. It's like being comfortable with what is it that makes you happy with your daily, and what money does it take to be able to be happy with that, or just that there's no stress. Like maybe it is that you take it to I'm at $0 each month. I didn't really save anything, but I'm comfortable with my lifestyle and whatever it is, so that we kind of balance out by the end of the month. But just giving yourself grace, because money is a very stressful thing in relationships. It's very stressful just individually. So just not only doing the budget and the numbers and the mechanical piece of it, but the very much the stressful piece. Where is the happy place medium in that, for yourself? And that's different for everybody. So keeping that in mind.
Yeah, that's a great
because
point.
that can be a deal breaker for relationships too. That's the other piece too, is having that communication with your partner. What do we want as a relationship? Everybody has their individuals. Do I want, I want to do this thing because I want to, these are my goals, and your partner's going to have the same thought of like, I want to do these things because I have these goals. But what do you guys have as a relationship goal? What are those plans? And money is a stressful conversation. So having that conversation together and being like, what does our future look like? What do we want? Does your envelope of fun look different than my envelope of fun? So,
and there's
keeping those in mind.
I think you hit a couple of really great areas. One, what does it cost to live my dream life, right? What do I really need to have, like as a preschool teacher? I don't make a lot of money, but what do I really need to make that work? Because I love being a preschool teacher. I do it for free, right? So that kind of idea. We covered that in a previous call. You guys should go back and check that out. Where it's like, how do you build your dream life, right? There's that old story of the fisherman where the businessman come down from America. This guy goes out on the boat every day at the same time, catches one fish, comes back home, and he's done. And the businessman is like, man, you catch one fish, you could catch 1,000 fish, and then you can market it. He's like, well, why? And he's like, well, and after a long sequence of things, it's like a 40-year process to end up coming back and doing the exact same thing the guy does. He goes out, fishes, comes back, hangs out with the family on the beach, and hangs out with his buddy drinking beer. And the businessman spent 40 years getting to that same point. So being aware of what it takes to get to that point that you dream of is very critical. So check out that previous call. And then to the financial piece, it's like 70% of divorces end because of money, something like that. Like 70% of marriages end in divorce, but 70% of those divorces end as a result of money problems, right? And that conversation is very difficult. There's a lot of ego wrapped up, especially as a guy. I can speak from my own experience. I'm a provider. That's how I believe men should function. We're providers. We should be bringing to the table money. The problem is, if you're not willing to check your ego to realize there's a problem, and then you blame each other, right? Sometimes things just go sideways and there's no one to blame.
Right.
And it should be solution oriented. And I think a lot of relationships fail in this regard. I've had past relationship that failed in this regard. I'm a provider. So if there's something not working, come to me with a solution as to how to fix it. Don't come to me and say, this is your fault because you didn't bring enough money to the table, or you spent more. And I see a lot of couples do this. When things go sideways because they're stressed out, they just immediately start blaming each other for the money gone. Well, if you're a traditional mechanism, like for me, I'm a traditionalist, man brings in money, woman stays home, takes care of the kids, both spend the money, then both of you have a responsibility to understand where that spending goes, even if only one is bringing money in. And there's this ownership piece with women in the workplace now where women are like, well, I have my money and you have your money, and we don't mix. And I used to do that. And my dad used to tell me, he's like, that's the stupidest fucking thing you could do, because you're building distrust right out the gate. Because I have mine, you have yours. And when I'm struggling, you're not going to help me with yours. And I didn't believe him. And I tried it. And it's fucking true. You guys need that's our money. It should be our money. And if that means you have 3 accounts, our money, and then your money and your money, fine. But I talk about this as the stupidest thing in corporate. You have revenue, you have overhead. It's one fucking bucket. If somebody tells you we don't have budget for that because it's in the other bucket, that's stupid. It's all the same money, right? It's the same thing with home. It's all the same money. Once it's gone, it's fucking gone. So how you figure it out shouldn't come from a place of blame. It should come from a place of solutions, right? And the other thing too is, how do you prioritize? With ego and money is like, if I bring in the money, I could easily be like, well, I bring in the money, so my stuff is priority. If that works for you, cool. I'm not going to tell you it shouldn't. Like that's what works for you. But I would argue that a woman who isn't making money is going to already feel like she's lower in value without you having to prostrate yourself and be like, well, I'm the man that makes all the money, and so you should feel bad about telling me what my priorities are. It's like, I'm of the camp of thought where it's like, if my woman comes to me and says, like, this is my priority, I'm like, I'm gonna make that happen. But that also means when I come to you and say, hey, this is my priority, you better not fucking tell me I can't. because you're going to piss me off, because you're going to tell me what I'm allowed and not allowed to do. I wouldn't do that to you. Don't do it to me. And so understand what those dynamics look like. And to Tish's point, like, talk about it. And they're hard conversations. I get loud when I talk about money, because it's a pain point for me growing up poor. It's very painful. So I have to manage myself more.
Good
Sometimes
question.
making a point of keeping those conversations short are helpful too. We have
I'm boxing.
a topic. Here's the topic. We
Yeah.
have 5 minutes. We'll do this 5 minutes, and then we're going to stop, because we know if we go further past this, it becomes a negative conversation that had nothing to do with the money discussion we were having. So sometimes keeping those parameters helps set a little social contract between the two of you of like, just this quick thing, and then we'll move on, so we don't turn it sour.
1000%.
Cool.
I like
You
it.
want to add something, Matt?
No, I'm liking what I'm hearing. You know, even an old dog like me needs to be relearn some things and better understand things as time goes on.
I think if everybody should always be learning.
Oh yeah.
I think the number one problem with most people in society today is they shut their brain down from new information. They're no longer curious, you know, and that you know, that's the whole founding of Heroes Veritas in a nutshell. Anyways, like, just, how do you build the life you want without shutting down curiosity? Because you're going to miss opportunities, but also how do you manage that so you don't end up in a shiny penny syndrome where you're chasing your tail on?
Well, you know, there's a lot of things to it, like bring this into a relationship call, but how you talked about when you're in a relationship, your significant other, your spouse, whatever, there's house money, and that's how it is. There's not her money, your money. And if you notice, couples that start out young usually make it better and it's always our money, because they build together. As they grow, they build together. Now, take into consideration myself in my 50s, Tish, you know, Art, people like us. Okay, so we're making it on our own, right? We're doing everything by ourselves. And now we meet somebody and come in, but they're set to doing things in their ways. You're set to doing things in your ways. And it kind of becomes this, you know, am I moving into her house? Is he moving into, or am I moving into his? You know, the vice versa. And, well, what are my duties? What are my responsibilities? What am I to pay? What is this? What is that? You know, and you've already laid out these plans for later on in life, where you've got such and such amount of money put away for this and that, and, you know, future endeavors, retirement and things. And it's like, well, yeah, but I had that for me, and now am I supposed to share this with them? Do they have their own money? What's going on? I mean, these are difficult conversations, and you may find that relationships don't always work out like the one you had, the foundation, the one you were building together at a young age, like they do when you're older. Yeah. Because you're not privy to sharing something you put 30 years into with somebody you've been with for 18, 19, 24 months. And now you're like going to make this commitment to one another. It's like, well, this is mine and you have yours.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, especially if you're kind of an old salty dog that have a plan already set in place. And this goes even if you're young. If you have a plan, the conversation needs to start with you, with yourself internally, of what am I willing to give? What am I willing not to give, right? And yeah. I always take everything, when it comes to relationships, before the emotions run high, I take everything to a binary conversation. There's what I can do and what I can't do. What I can't do is things those are my boundaries. I'm not changing that. What I can do is things that I'm like, you know, I could see me giving up a little bit. I can compromise there. And so when you're talking about money, especially, is like, if you have that nest egg and you're like, this is my nest egg, I commit to you. And from here forward, any money we make will be our money, but that's mine. That's my safe haven. That's my insurance cash, right? And if this doesn't work out, I can always back on that, right? You have to be honest with yourself first, because I think what a lot of people do is they start having those conversations from a relationship standpoint in the guise of, what does society deem appropriate? Well, now, and women do this a lot to guys, and guys do this a lot to other guys. Guys generally don't do this a lot to women, because we don't have really a say anymore in society. So we just kind of keep our fucking mouth shut. But women will come in and say, well, you're the man, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And the guy will go, okay, never checking in with themselves and going, well, I don't want to. So then what do? We just set the seed for resentment. And instead of the man stepping up and going, listen, I understand that's what you think we're going to do, but I can tell you right now, I'm going to have a hurdle with that. So let's discuss that. Let's have that out. And like Tish said, time boxing or topic boxing, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about money in a hole. We're talking about this little nugget here. That's the conversation. I will not be doing that. Now, the other part of that is that's that person taking responsibility for themselves and saying, this is what I will not be doing. The problem that the other side receives it as, oh, you don't love me enough, which is a fucked up thing to do to the other person. Because what you've done is you've taken a situation which they are communicating to you, this is my need, and you said, well, I'm going to make it about me, so fuck you. And then tempers flare, and then it never goes anywhere, and you get stuck, right? So the reality is, you internally go, this is what I'm willing to do, this is what I'm not willing to do. That other person also needs to do that same thing. And then when you come to the table, you need to know what that looks like. And you have to be willing to walk away. That's the other thing. It's like, you have to be willing to go, listen, we're at an impasse. You can't do this and I can't do that. What the fuck are we doing then? And that's the conversation people are afraid of. They don't want to have that conversation. It's scary. And they don't, and I have this conversation with a lot of my coaching clients, men mostly. They believe that if they say, I can't do that, then that reflects poorly on their character. And if that person walks away, that demeans their value. Your value is not subject to somebody's poor taste.
No.
Right? Just because I don't like chocolate ice cream doesn't devalue the ice cream. There's plenty of people that like chocolate ice cream. It's a great ice cream. I just don't fucking like it. It doesn't work for me. Right? The same thing should be with relationships. Just because I don't like what you like doesn't mean I'm a bad person, doesn't sacrifice my character, doesn't make me a less than. It just means we are not simpatico. We are not going to work because you see a different future than I do. And all you're doing by ignoring that is creating the seed of resentment that eventually will break you anyway.
Oh yeah,
And
it'll break.
time.
We're wasting time. It'll break a relationship, but those are difficult conversations to have because they kind of start out. You start out on a simple plane and try to be open-minded and discuss things and be evenly keeled. Before you know it, emotions are involved and tempers are flared and they get ugly. I mean, even
write it down.
Speaker,
I say write it down, text it to each other, right? Use the technology, right? Because I'm that way. I'm a hot-blooded dude. Like the minute I feel disrespected, I'll snap. I don't deal with disrespect very well. And they may not see it as disrespect, but I do. Because I will take it as them attacking my character. And that's how they mean it too. They don't realize it, but that's how they mean it. If you make a blanket statement against me as a person, you're attacking my character. You mean to until I call you on it, right? It's that old adage of the guy that's like, oh, I was just joking. No, you fucking weren't. Like, take responsibility for what you said. So what I do to avoid that is I write it. I'll write it on a piece of paper. I'll be like, listen, here's what I want to talk about. I want you to read it first, then we'll have a conversation. So you're not blindsided by anything. You can emotionally process what I wrote, and then we can have this conversation. If it detracts from that conversation, if we start talking about your bullshit or some other conversation, then I take the paper away and I walk away.
Yep.
And that's the end of the conversation we agreed upon. The minute I grab that paper and walk, don't follow me, it's done for now. You need to go and sit with your shit. I need to go sit with my shit. We can come back to this paper in a little bit. But writing it down does serve a lot. And I like to say demons can't live on paper, right? Fears, animosities, resentments. Like once you write shit down, like it can't live there.
It stays up here.
But you keep it on that loop track. You keep it on that loop track and you'll just burn yourself down.
Right? Learn not to push stop here.
The loop track creates friction, which eventually becomes a fire, right? And you'll burn everything down. And so you put it on paper and it removes its energy. And so that's one of the tips that I give to like myself. I use it all the time. Safe words is another thing. Fucking tree star, pineapple, like get the fuck out. Like you're going too high here. We need to get the fuck out. Like we need to do something else. And
so you throw safe words into a conversation, like mitigate those on a piece of paper. These are safe words. When you feel like it's becoming too threatening, you scream one of these and we stop.
If I start getting too high up, I've agreed with myself that if I hear pineapple, I'm out. Right. Yeah. So it'll piss me off. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, I'll walk the garage and fucking throw something through a wall.
Yeah. Somebody stops me mid-thought, I'm going to get fucking pissed. But you said your safe word. I told you I'd honor that safe word. Now, what it does is it challenges me to have to assassinate my own character because I gave you my word I'd do that and break my own integrity and overindulge in my own anger or honor my word, which is a safe word. So it removes the person from being emotionally attached to walking away. You see, that's the beauty of that tool is I've now taken ownership of that safe word, which means that if I go against that safe word and I don't listen to that safe word that I agree to, then I subvert my own integrity and character.
Mhm.
Versus if I never
But
communicated that and you tell me I don't want to talk about this, well, then I just think you're a fucking child and you can't handle it.
But in the heat of a and I don't want to call it an argument, in the heat of a discussion, a very emotional discussion, okay, and that safe word said, you just, oh, I got to honor that, or do you go, fuck it, what I come up with that for, and turn around and walk away, you know?
That's exactly
and
what
it's
you
still
do.
kind of, but you're like, God damn it, I got to walk away.
Yeah. So the other thing too,
Or do you give the turn around? Do you turn around and do what I do, and you spin around before you walk out of the room and go, and one more thing, I never did like your mother, and then
yeah, and that's the emotion, right? And you say shit you don't mean,
yeah,
right? And I mean, it may be honest, it may be truthful, but you didn't mean to fucking say it because it doesn't serve the argument, right? And it takes practice. But if you write it down and you've cued this, you've kind of put it on like you've queued it up, right? So without
in the back of your mind, you're waiting for the word to come out.
Yeah. So like and so it creates an anchor point, like a almost like a dam, right? Without the conversation, without the writing, without you having that conversation in your head, instead you're just filling up the dam to break the levee, right?
Right.
That loop, you're just filling up the dam to break the levee. What writing it down and saying that safe word is like, this is how you initiate the levee break. This is how you initiate the drain so that it doesn't boil up and then break the levee. So we don't do any of that stuff. And I'm using this as an analogy, but like, or a metaphor, but we don't do any of that stuff. Instead, we just like, and another thing, and another thing, and I pour it in, and I pour it in. And then eventually we're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, why'd you have to go and say that? Which then pisses you off because you're like, stop being a baby, right? That's how the emotional side happens. So when we get to that point, we have to have something that anchors us back to the logical side, right? And the reality is we do that in corporations all the time.
Yeah, I think to add to that too, though, is you have to have, if you're going to do something like that, of writing it down to help balance out and have the ability to walk out, you also have to build into that same concept of how do we come back to this? Because clearly coming back to it is going to be a double heated conversation because one, the conversation itself, the starting point was a hot topic. And then the fact that you used your safe word to walk out becomes a second hot topic. And now you're just spiraling because, you never agreed to like, what is the cooling down period? We agree, we say the safe word, we give ourselves X amount of whatever time to cool down from it, but then we agree to come back and circle back in at neutral ground to have that conversation. So I think if you're doing that plan, you have to come up with some way of how do we get back, because the conversation still needs to be had, but you're just going to continue to avoid it, or it will always be the hot topic. And so you have to agree, if you're doing a contract type thing, you have to agree of like, this is how we come back to again have that conversation in a safe mode where we both have had what X amount of time. And again, a side note, but circling back to whatever love language is in a relationship, and even for business, what's the love language in the business partnerships? How do we bring back conversation to each other? If you can't handle it this way, how do we do it in a way that you can understand, or that everybody involved can understand, so we get back to a neutral space and still move forward with the conversations that need to be had.
That's hugely important, because myself, I'd be over in the corner like Mike Tyson, just waiting for the bell to ring. We're coming back out. Let's go.
Right.
I'm coming swinging now. I'm gonna knock you out.
Right.
And
which doesn't serve a purpose,
too, right? Like
no.
Like if you don't come back, then it just becomes a resentment point. I think they did a study where like 80% or 85% of all relationships just argue about the same three things for the entire length of the relationship.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. And it's because they never come back, and it never gets solved. It's just like, I want to proffer peace and be diplomatic, but there's no actual resolution because we can't agree. Right. The whole disagree. It's like, we agree to disagree, and then next time it comes up, I'm gonna fucking lose my shit on you because we agreed to disagree and we never solved it. Right.
Right.
So
women, yes. As women, we'll save it up. We'll save up something from a year ago and be like, you remember that day when you like, yeah.
You remember a decade ago.
We'll just throw it all back in. Yeah.
Even if it's not applicable.
Absolutely.
You'll be arguing about family dynamics, and all of a sudden another thing. Remember when we were broke and you did blah, 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 blah. It's like,
right. You didn't fix the sink. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, is like, that mechanism is very functional for women too, because Men are very emotional when disrespected. Women are just overly emotional, right? Like that's just, they'll tell you straight up. They're like, I don't know how to control my emotions. I believe that that's part of their superpower. I know a lot of women are like, whoa, bro, like fucking don't say I'm overly emotional. It's like, it is your superpower to be overly emotional. That's why you're compassionate. That's why you have depth of compassions that men don't have. That's why you're empathetic. But when you feel slighted, then the floodgates get broken, right? And then all of that superpower becomes, you know, Bizarro Superman just fucking torching everybody like that. And that's okay. What are those mechanisms to be written down? What are your anchor points? Who's responsible for coming back to the table? Who's responsible for making sure you come back to the table? Because you can only come back to the table if both parties agree to come back to the table. And so are you going to take ownership and be like, no, I'm not ready, and just keep pushing that out until we forget? Or if that person is responsible for bringing it back to the table and they come back and they're like, all right, it's time to come back, then come back. And for me, I believe logically in utility is whoever walks away is responsible for setting it back up, because you were the one that broke. You were the one that was emotionally compromised. You were the one that needed the space. You were the one that needed the time. So if you called it off and you called the safe word, then it's on you to decide when it's time to come back to the table. Now, when you come back to the table, the other person can say, I need a little bit more, but I don't think you should put it past 24 hours. It should never go longer than 24 hours before you have that conversation again.
Well, and marriage experts were like too, like, don't go to bed mad. So if you can figure it out before you go to bed, cool. Now, if you're having an argument and you're in bed, maybe you have a safe word of like, okay, we're not doing this while we're in bed. This is our safe space right here. Like,
a safe word in bed.
That's a whole other. That's a different safe word.
That's a different safe word.
That goes right into
different
I tell
situation
women all the time, I said, you know, men are easy. We are all 4S. And you know this from the military. You know, we're all 4S. Food, fuck, fight, or flight. That's men in a nutshell. That's it. What do you want to do? You know, that's all we know.
And the thing is, I think where most men and women butt heads is men will table it for the 4Fs. They'll table it to have a meal with you and be completely content, not talking about it, and be good with you. And meanwhile, you're fucking throwing the plate on the fucking table, all pissed off at me, right? Like, guys are like, "What are you still mad about?"
What are you mad about?
Yeah, exactly. We'll respond.
We're eating,
right? Like, we'll turn around and
we'll throw food at you, but it's gonna be burnt. So you know, whatever.
Yeah, like because it's now.
I'll show him. I'll burn his
now
food.
Spiteful, right? It's now spiteful.
Yeah, right.
Guys won't be spiteful. We'll be like, no, we said what the safe word is. We told ourselves we'd walk away, and we'll cut it. And I've been called bipolar. Well, I am bipolar, but I've been called bipolar for other reasons before, because we'll be in a heated debate. I'll lose my temper, and in 5 minutes I'd be like, "Hey, babe, you want to go grab food?" Right? Because that's how I function. Because I'm not gonna let you fester. Nobody gets to fester me. That's the thing, is it's rot to me. Nobody gets to rot me from the inside out but me. So if we decided to split up during that conversation because it got heated or whatever, you don't get to stay there and linger and make me worse and I lose sleep over. No, you don't have that power. I was heated in the moment because of actions that were taken in the moment. Now that that moment's over, I've logicked it away. This is just how I'm wired, right? Like, other people who aren't wired are like that, are like, I'm still fucking pissed at him. I can't talk to him. Every time I look at his face, I'm going to slap the shit out of him. Like, cool. Go to another room. I'm going to do me. I'm going to be happy over here. When you're ready, you come talk to me, right? I'm good, right? And the same thing goes with like colleagues, enemies, people that have burned you in the past, people that talk shit. Like, I always get really pissed off about that stuff because I'm like, dude, I don't even remember your name. I don't even remember what fucking happened. Like, you burn me, we don't hang out. I don't go and audit why, right? If you burn me, I'm not auditing why you did that to me. I may audit like what could I've seen earlier so that didn't happen. I might audit that. I might audit my own actions. But the minute you burn me, and this could go romantic, business, whatever, you don't exist. Only the action exists. So you as a person, I'm not sitting there judging or like creating my own little like conniving thing to get back at you. You don't exist. Only the action exists. So you've cut yourself out of my life, out of my story. I don't have to give you the power when you're just the action. The action has no power. Like, it's just that happened, right? Take a matter of fact, it's the same thing to kind of circle back. And then I want to end on this because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Like the money conversation, right? I said about it earlier, like, take responsibility. Don't blame anybody. It's everybody's money, right? It's the action. We're out of money. That's the action. When you look at it as the action is we're out of money, then you have only a few options. How do we avoid being out of money next month? How do we get more money now? How do we handle it? Are we okay? Right? Will we survive? Those are solution-based questions. Not, well, you bought this and you really shouldn't have bought that. And I told you better. And I told you you're bad at this. That's blame. That's the person being attached to the action. Disassociate the action and get to the root of it. What do you care about? I feel unsafe because we're out of money. That's what women, I feel unsafe. We're out of money. You said you had it. You said you were going to take care of me. Right? Guys then get pissed off. We get mad and we're like, I am fucking handling it. What the fuck are you talking about? It's only happened like whatever, right? I've said that many times. The reality is, looking at it, you have to look at it from their position. They don't feel safe because there's no money. It's like, I get it. I understand, but we'll be okay. Your job as the man is to say, I see what I fucked up on, right? I overspent, I planned wrong, whatever. Take responsibility for it and then go fix it. I put my feelers out. I'm going to go work on some cars. I'm going to go talk to some people, see if I can do a job. I'm going to get money back in there. If that's not an option, what's the plan to not have that happen next month? Take an extra shift, right? If you're the provider, your job is to make her feel safe, then your job is to not take it personally and go, I fucked up, and own it. She shouldn't have to worry about that. She should not have to worry about that money going away, right? Like one of the best things that I ever heard was, I should make so much money, I shouldn't care if she spends it all. I should be so good at making money that I don't care if she depletes it and we go in the negative tomorrow, it'll be back in. I love that concept. It's unrealistic.
That's a cool concept, but it takes away the responsibility from the woman's side of make sure that, you know, if that's their job then to be caring for the house, that they are running that budget, that business, right, as leanly as possible as well. So it takes two. I get that it's the men's responsibility, and that's great. But in that model, the woman has to then also be responsible and part of the conversation of this is how we make it work. You know, if it ends didn't meet and we didn't come off with an even budget this month, what do we do next month as a group? Not just, well, you need to go out and make another shift, you need to go out and whatever. No, what do I need to bring to the table to help make sure that, you know, maybe we change brands of food, maybe we, you know, do something different, meal prep a little differently, or change the menu or whatever. But it's just, yeah, turn the lights off. It's just as much responsibility if that's as for the if this is the model that they're using and the men is going out to provide and maybe they pick up the extra shift, that's great. But as a partnership, what's happening on the other side, the women have just as much responsibility to make sure that they are doing their part to run that business as smoothly as possible. I
agree. And that, I think, goes to end it here. It goes back to being solution-based with your money.
Yes. Because
if a man comes to the table and he's like, listen, this happened, here's how I'm going to avoid it in the future, taking an extra shift or whatever. Then if she's solution-based, she'll come with, I'll also do this. We won't go to the stores often. We'll make things stretch a little bit further. And then maybe both of them come together and go, here are the solutions that I came up with. And maybe the guy's like, no, I don't want you to have to stretch that. I'll just pick up the extra shift. Or maybe she's like, I want more time with you. I'll just not go to the grocery store as much, or I won't use the heater as much so that you don't have to pick up that extra shift. And now you're supporting each other in a solution model rather than a blame.
Absolutely.
And that's what it really comes down to is when it comes to finances, blame gets you nowhere. When money, it's cold, hard, methodical, and logical. If you're not focusing on your money from a logical perspective of just no feelings, just facts, coming from solution-based mentality, then you're always going to be wanting more. You're always going to run into problems. Your relationships are going to always flounder because you're too busy worried about what the other person's doing to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And with that, I want to be respectful of time. I know we're about 15 minutes over. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been a great call.
Great call.
And if anybody wants to continue the conversation in the portal, post it up. We'll answer it. Let the community learn from each other, right? That's the whole point. And otherwise, stay dangerous, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks. Bye.
Good luck this week, Tish.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Get it.